I slept fine except the daggone dog woke me up at 05. So I was planning to sleep to 06, but the dog woke up. And so he kind of tells when I move, and then he'll move. And then the problem is that as soon as he gets up, he has to shake, and then he has to scratch his here. And so the shaking, he goes, shakes his whole body, and his ears flap. And then he starts to itch. So it's the first is the blap, 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 blap of his ears just flapping. And then it's like tuk, 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 tuk of his scratching. And so by that point, it's like, fuck, I'm up. Daggone dog. I heard my daughter say that now. Daggone dog. Get the daggone dog. But this week has been interesting. This week's been something else. So we did the memorial for Andy on Wednesday. And then last night I had a Zoom call with my fraternity brothers from college. And it's funny because the Zoom call, the memorial call on Wednesday was all with people that have never met me, the people that don't know me. Some of them know me, but not well. But mostly they were Andy's friends, and so they know me from Andy. But other than basically I'm his boss, they didn't really know me. And so what was really special and wonderful was just interacting with that group of people, and in particular interacting with these warriors that he served with in Korea. And this was in like the 90s, I think. But just interacting with them, we got to hear some stories, but we also got to talk a little bit about, just being the best version of yourself, what that felt like, to be of service, et cetera, et cetera. So that was Wednesday, and that was very fulfilling. It really felt that we did as best we could with the circumstances to give people a platform to express their love for Andy in the context of the fact that it was his demons that kind of took him, right? He lost the battle between kind of the good and the bad inside of us, so to say. He lost the battle between his angels and his demons. And I hate to think about it as a lost battle, but he couldn't overcome this particular pattern, and it just was too big, and he couldn't overcome it. And I understand. That was Wednesday. And yesterday was the engagement with my fraternity, and these were the guys I went to college with and joined the fraternity with, and were people that I really kind of developed I don't know if you'd call it developed. For my freshman and sophomore year were a regression into the things that make the demons so powerful. Like it was explorations with drugs. It was relationships with women that weren't wholesome, that were like, women have demons too, right? So all of our demons danced, right? We all danced together in the pale moonlight, right? And I remember so much, and being able to talk about, just how we're doing and seeing everybody, and it was cool. What was interesting was I made a point to ask everybody about how their drinking and how their sleeping was going. And I would say 65%, which is not great, 65% is everyone's doing okay. But about 45% of us are not. And for me, it's now become a clear indicator of the potential for the demons to kind of take hold is around sleep and drinking. Fortunately, I don't think there's any drug problems, because I feel like drinking or heroin or cocaine or whatever, I guess they all fall into a similar pattern of disruptive patterns. But my impression is that like a deep cocaine or meth addiction would be even more difficult to get over than alcohol. But either way, these things were what I wanted to know about people, and I wanted people to talk about them, and so they did, and people really did, and it it was interesting just to hear people talk about them. But it was also really like the Zoom environment is interesting. You're not close to each other physically. Nonetheless, it was still so interesting to see the kind of the alphas and the betas, kind of go at it, right? So there's like this persona in a pack or a tribe that is very kind of, I don't know, it's old, it's deep. And so like some of the alpha guys and some of the beta guys, and like I'm in the middle, right? I exist in the middle. But anyway, there was still this kind of back and forth between these two, and you could the same feelings, the same styles, the same personalities. They came out over Zoom, and that was really cool. It felt good to be connected with them all again. And but anyway, I in order to get people talking about their vulnerabilities, I shared myself as the most vulnerable person in the room. Like I talked about all the pieces that are kind of the pieces of my, I don't know, what's the right way to describe it? All the lower powers of my being. The selfishness, the stuff that's very self-centered, that's very hedonistic, that's very personal pleasure, that's very get what I want, take what I want. Just the underdeveloped elements of myself are the things I still have to account for today. And I would say that the underdeveloped things about myself are not the hedonistic side. I don't know what the right way to describe it is. I would say these aspects of who I was are still partly with me. Like I still find ways to kind of nurture more self-centered behaviors. And when I was in college, especially those first 2 years of college, all those behaviors, very body-oriented behaviors, drinking, sex, drugs, not that many drugs, but enough, enough. But all those things I really developed in my first 2 years, and those things were ultimately what led to my demise in college, where I took a year off to get my shit straight, got myself straight, came back to school. And then that was after September 11th, and I joined the military. So I spent my first 2 years in college is 98, 99, 2000. Took between 2000 and 2001 off. 2001, September 11th, I'm working. I'm not back at school September 11th. I joined the Army that summer after September 11th, after the winter, and then I joined the Army. Then I went back to school in the fall after I joined the Army, and I had really kind of turned myself around, and I kind of had taken, I mean, that's kind of what the military did for me. It made all those things, kind of the tribalism, the willingness to kind of be involved in any kind of anything, right? Just, I've got my boys, I've got my team, we can do whatever. And so we did. I mean, we partied, we engaged in all kinds of things, and fights. Yeah, we did all that. But my point is, we get into this meeting last night, and all those things are still there, right? All those memories are still there, and we're interacting with each other and talking about our demons. But for the first time, from what I can remember, we're actually talking about our demons and our and you know, our vulnerabilities, right? Our vulnerabilities. And I guess what I've been trying to do is give people an outlet to. I guess what I tried to do last night was talk about my vulnerabilities in order for other people to talk about them, so they could be kind of more on up, like in people's kind of line of sight. Because what happens is it just starts to eat away at you over and over and over again. These vulnerabilities, it gets underneath, and then you develop the patterns around them, and then you're screwed. But I was able to be the most vulnerable guy in the room, and I was able to share my most vulnerable patterns and how I am making efforts to address them. And as I shared these things, my guys were like, "I got your back. Like I can help there, or how about this, or what about this?" And other guys experience that too. Like this one kid in particular, you know, he's really in a position of challenge, and his life has brought him to a place of challenge where to break through the threshold, to break out of the current patterns that he's in, is going to be tough. And part of what's going to be tough about it is when you've built patterns that the demons like, they fight you when you try to change them, and they fight you through self-doubt, and you know, you're not going to be good enough, or it's not going to work out, or whatever. The demonic narrative is very, very powerful. And so to have a tribe that's like, "Hey, I'll help you through this," that's going to be helpful. So I'm very excited to see if this one individual makes some moves. It was so awesome to see everybody on the call back each other. It was just cool, and I really think that we have to be proactive about connecting to each other, reaching out over and over and over again, and just keep reaching out. We just have to keep reaching out, because if we don't, we're going to lose a fair number of people. We are until the earth gets back onto a pattern that's predictable and sustainable, which we are not on right now. Until we get back to that, and people develop patterns that kind of fulfill them again, which we can't do right now because of the virus, it's going to be hard. It's going to be tough. And so we have to kind of go into the spaces that, you know, a lot of people who've maybe evolved them or whatever just don't want to do. Right? I don't want to go into that space. I don't want to contend with the doubt, worry, and fear. I don't want to contend with my demons. But I'll say this: contend you must. You have to. You have to. And if you don't, the patterns that evolve as coping strategies for the management of your vulnerabilities and ultimately your demons become harder and harder and harder to break through the longer you cultivate them. And it was interesting. My life kind of broke apart my sophomore year, where all the things that I put energy into, the cultivation of good exercise patterns, good relationships to school, good training habits for study habits, all those things I just chucked. I remember this one time I turned in a paper that was due the next day by emailing it to my buddy the night before. And the reason why I did it was because we were partying. Like I didn't want to do the work, so we were partying. So I sent him, we were in the same history class. I sent him my paper, and he turned it in for me in email format. It's pathetic. I was just like, whatever. All I care about is getting what I wanted, and all the patterns were just a disaster. So I had to tell my parents. I was like, look, I've got to drop out of school for a year. And so they did, and I started to address my stuff. That was in, it was 2000, 99, 2000. But yeah, having people that are willing to talk about it and share, and to see that other people struggle too. Yeah, like what's one of the things, that same guy, right? The same guy who turned in my history paper in email format. Uh, he was he was great about talking to the group as a whole. As what you're going through is not the only you're not the only one that's gone through this. We've gone through this, as a group, collectively. We've all gone through what you're going through in some form or fashion. We're here for you. Just because you're going through what you're going through doesn't mean you're isolated. That's another thing that's worth pointing out. The demons are very clever. It's a very tricky thing to be inside of a kind of a demonistic mindset where, you know, what happens is when your vulnerabilities are not addressed, when you're not inclined to evolve, the narrative, the self-talk that develops is by its nature isolating and blameful and victimistic. It's not even a word, but it's so much of the narrative in a demonic kind of space is that it's not your fault, it's their fault, it's this, it's that, it's you'll never this or you'll never that, or you need to do this or you need to do that. It's very, very destructive narrative. And so what this guy did when he said, don't let that narrative be what you really think. We've all been through this too. You're not alone. I mean, he in an instant just bursted that narrative. Now, the individual, when they go back in their own life, especially if they're not sleeping and especially if they're drinking too much, that damn narrative is going to be really, really strong. And what happens is the narrative goes from a kind of a self-talk to a feeling. And when it gets deep into the feelings, that's when you know you're in trouble. That was where Andy was at. Andy was past the thinking part, and he was in the being in a demonic place. And that's the place that everybody is who, when they pull the trigger, that's the place where they are. They're past thinking, and they're into just this being, the demon. Because we all have that potential in us, and particularly the warrior, right? The warrior is willing to go into wherever, even the dark places, for fun, right? The warrior's willing to do that. So there's a relationship to the demon that the warrior, by her very nature, contends with. And so it's really important to pay attention to that in your own life and to cultivate these patterns that are sustainable and predictable. Because the more you do that, the more open-hearted you can be, and the more open-hearted you can be, the more kind of your demons are just like they just can't hack it. They just can't. That's why demons don't show up very much around your mother, right? Unless you've got issues with your mother. But if you're around your mother and you love your mother and your mother loves you, which is mostly the way mothers are, demons are just like, they just can't. They can't hang, man. They're just too fragile by their very nature. They're shadow, right? Like you look around your room and there's shadow. Well, light creates shadow. That's the thing. Like light creates shadow. Shadow does not create light. And so the demons are fragile. It's just when they keep kind of being the preeminent thing that they become bigger and bigger and bigger. And so you get good night's sleep on a regular, every day. Like 95% of the time you're getting good sleep. You're not drinking heavily. You're mostly not drinking, or if you are, it's minimal. It's not something you think about on a regular basis. If you missed it, whatever. It's not something you think about when you wake up. If you got those basic things, for the most part, you're going to be all right. If you're shitting well, sleeping well, and not putting too much toxic stuff into your body, you're going to be okay. That just your very nature is going to be okay. But if you're a trained warrior, if you've been through military training, if you've seen kind of the shadow sides of the human experience, just know that you got to contend with this stuff. Just know that you got to train, you got to work at it, you got to evolve it, and it's not hard to do. It just takes practice and time, and you just got to do it. You just got to do it. And so, get on these Zoom calls, get with your friends. Hell, join the Armor Down Mindfulness group when that gets pushed out next week, I think. And yes, start working on that. I want to read this because then we'll go into the training. We'll do a quick one because I know I'm talking a lot. But the path of peace is exceedingly vast, reflecting the grand design of the hidden and manifest worlds. Okay, so what that means is the vastness. Okay, is the vastness is that the demons are encapsulated in. It's not that you've eliminated them. It's not that the art of peace is here and the demons are over here. No, the art of peace takes all of that, all the shadow. It's exceedingly vast, right? A warrior is a living shrine of the divine, one who serves the grand purpose. So what the warrior does is the warrior takes the peaceful part of themselves, the vulnerable part of themselves, the part of themselves that is true, the part of themselves that shines the light, right, in the face of the demons, and the demons just they just can't hang, right? So the warrior is the one that goes into the dark place, and with an evolved self going into that dark place and confronting the demons is what warriors do. And so you see that not just as the enemy or out there, but if you start to see that as in here in your own heart, that's what the art of peace is taking that light and shining it on every aspect of yourself and accepting that as part of who you are, but not what you are, not what you're grounded on. You're grounded in light and goodwill and goodness, and you got to work at it. You got to work at it. But that's the path, right? That's the path for the art of peace, is to go into all those places and evolve them. Evolve yourself, demons and all. All right, let's do a quick. You know what? I don't feel like going through all 4 bells. We're just going to do this real quick. So, what do you hear? Feel your ground, pelvis, core, heart space, throat, top of the head. Take a full breath in. Let it out. Let's do just a couple more rounds of full inhale, full exhale. And before you finish, maybe commit to yourself to reach out. Reach out, reach out, reach out. And just keep reaching out. If there's ever the kind of the narrative of, oh, no one cares, or oh, this is it, oh, that's the narrative of the demon, right? The demon is like, just, I mean, I hate to call it that because it seems kind of silly, but like it needs a descriptor. We got to talk about it. And so when that happens, just reach through it, reach out, reach out, reach out. Let's take 2 more breaths on the second exhale. We're done. It's kind of nice. It's quick. Bam. All right. That finishes this week's stanzas. I think that's I don't remember what week it is. I have to look at my notes. I hope you have a great weekend. I encourage you to reach out. We're going to start the Armor Down Mindfulness group next week. So we'll see how that evolves. The month of September will be free. After that, you're going to have to pay for it. It's been a week, and to be able to share it like this is cool. So thank you for being there, technology. Thank you for being there, Armor Down. I appreciate it, and see you next week.